Welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat. I am your host. Apologies if my voice is a little raspy. I've spent the morning recording videos and I've recorded a few other podcasts before this. So if you hear that, that's why. Today's episode is going to be about how not all good things are difficult to attain, which is a struggle mentality that I think a lot of us have. And I think it ties into scarcity. It ties into, of course, the way you were raised in your childhood and what you were shown growing up and what you were told about good things. And this can also, this applies to a variety of things in your life. It can apply to relationships. It can apply to jobs, to money, to friendships, to anything. If you believe that in order to have good things, that they are difficult, that they are somehow a challenge or something that requires you to prove your worth and your value, then you will probably hold yourself back from having those things, or you will chase things that are difficult to attain because maybe they're not aligned with you. And that's why they're difficult, right? We want to look at things as easy, maybe not easy, but easeful, right? Because even anything that's easy and doesn't require, you kind of stepping into a bit of discomfort at times because you're pushing your boundaries a little bit because you're, out of your comfort zone, then if it's too easy, it's probably too comfortable too. And sometimes that can mean familiar patterns that aren't healthy for you, just things that you've grown up with, right? So there is a bit of nuance here that we have to be mindful of. But we want to look at the things that are right for us, that are aligned with us as easeful, in the sense that they don't have to be difficult for us to see value in them. Just because something is difficult to attain, because something is hard to get, does not mean it is better than the things that are easeful for you to attain. The things that are easeful for you to attain, that flow naturally with who you are and how you're showing up, of course, as long as you are doing the things you need to do to grow and improve and align with the things that are right for you. If they are difficult to attain, they are not aligned with you. The more easeful, the more aligned. And it's really important to change your perspective on that, because I think that is a very prominent mindset of what is worthwhile and worthy and valid, right? We even see this in the dating discourse online. The idea of playing hard to get, as though people value things that are harder for them to attain. So you have to put up this show or performance of being difficult to get. But all you're doing basically is creating an energy and an environment of chasing, of being a reward, a prize. And that's not how a healthy, sustainable relationship works. It's not supposed to be you being chased all the time, or you chasing, or you having to keep up some sort of level of excitement or uncertainty of will they, won't they. That's not what a healthy relationship is. Even though I know we are conditioned to believe that that's what it is, that those excitement feelings are what a healthy, what love is, because of what we see on TV and movies and all that stuff. It's not, right? The things that are aligned with you, that are healthy for you, that are good for you, are easeful to attain because they are not running from you. They are there. They are available to you. But it can be difficult to understand that, because if you are always thinking that the more difficult, the more worthwhile, the more difficult, the more valuable, because it's hard for me, it pushes me, I have to work hard, I have to do this to get it. And when you get it finally, it's satisfying because I've worked so hard for it. It's that is almost a kind of backwards mentality to have about the things that you can and want in your life. If you only want things that are difficult, that is really important to look at and ask yourself about. Why do you only want things that are difficult, that are not easeful for you? Because what you're telling yourself when you chase things that are unavailable to you is that you don't deserve to have what you want. That's what you're reinforcing in your mind every time you believe that what I want, or the things that are good for me or right for me, are difficult to attain. You're telling yourself, I don't deserve to have them, or I'm not worthy of it, right? Because, we're not here to promote entitlement, but you don't even feel worthy of having what you want. So you always chase the things that you don't want. And then that reinforces the belief over and over again and creates this idea of, I have to prove myself now. I don't feel worthy of having what I want easefully, that it's going to flow to me or I'm going to flow to it. So I have to prove myself by convincing it or somehow working really hard to get it, which then just reinforces the belief again that, see, I'm not worthy because this thing keeps running from me, because this thing's so difficult for me to get. I'm not worthy. So the way for me to be worthy is to chase it more. It becomes this cycle that just continues to reinforce your self-limiting beliefs, right? So it's important to remind yourself and to look at it from a different perspective of the things that are right for me, the things that I want, that I desire, do not have to be difficult. They don't have to be difficult. And when you start seeing it from that perspective, life becomes more enjoyable, right? Even if your circumstances are exactly the same. Again, this isn't to disregard how difficult it can be in life, right? How much life can be a struggle in a sense, right? But to at least look at some things, if possible, as they don't have to be difficult for me to get. I don't have to always be fighting or struggling or looking at myself as having to always be a warrior in some way to be able to be worthy of having just ease and fun and pleasure. Like, you don't have to. And I'm sure there are some things in your life that you can practice this with, even if small. Even the small things can make a huge difference in the way you see yourself. Because yeah, some things will require you to work for them, but it won't have to do with your worth, right? You won't tie it to your worth anymore. It'll just be like, yeah, some things are hard. Life sucks sometimes. It is difficult and I have to put more effort in. And obviously not everything is always going to be easy, but it doesn't tie to your worth anymore. It's not you having to prove yourself and your worthiness and your value. And so you stop seeing the things that are difficult as in any way being above you, right? Pedestalizing them, whether it's people, whether it's opportunities, jobs, whatever. They're no longer on a pedestal where it's like, oh, to have them would mean that I'm good enough because they're great. They're amazing. They're godlike. They're whatever. It's like, no, we got to change that perspective and bring you to an equilibrium, right? To make you equal with the things that you want. And if you are equal, if you see yourself as equal with them, then of course it wouldn't feel like a struggle or difficult to attain them because you're on the same level. Because why wouldn't you be on the same level with something you want, right? And this then ties into making sure and asking yourself, do you want you, right? If you feel like the things that you want are difficult to attain, that you can't get them, they're not on your level, they're not equal to you, then that would suggest in a sense that you don't want you right now. Like, you're not looking at yourself as desirable, right? And that's really important to make sure that your internal relationship to yourself is sorted out, because then the external relationships you have, again, whether to people, to work, to opportunities, whatever, that'll struggle too. So we have to work within in order to work without afterwards, right? It's coming from the inside out in a sense. So ask yourself, if you struggle with this, do you want you? Are you desirable to yourself? And if not, okay, what's going on there? Like, why do you feel undesirable to yourself? Are you doing the things that you know you need to do that are aligned with who you want to be and your values and your morals? If not, then of course you don't feel desirable to yourself, right? Of course you're going to struggle. And of course you're always going to look for that desirability and that value externally, which means that you will chase the things that you think are above you to prove your worth to them. But ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to prove your worth to yourself, but that can only be done inwards, right? Like, that's an inside job. So you have to start working on that, looking at yourself and your relationship with yourself and asking, how do I feel about myself? Like, do I actually desire me? And if you don't desire you, you have to start figuring out how to do that. How would you impress you? How would you, win yourself over in a sense, right? And I know that sounds so silly. It sounds almost narcissistic, but it really does start with us and the way we see ourselves. That affects everything outside of us afterwards. Not everything, because you can't control everything in life, of course. But the things that are controlled by you, like the way you show up in relationships and the people you gravitate towards, that is controlled by your internal state, the way you feel about yourself. Because if you don't feel worthy or good enough or desirable, you are going to chase things that prove that to you, right? You're basically just going to prove exactly what you believe about yourself. But if you believe about yourself that I am desirable because, see, I show up in this way and I do this for myself and I show myself that I care about myself by honoring my feelings or honoring my desires or whatever. If you feel that way about yourself, you're going to look for people and things that prove that to you. Because why would you look for the opposite? It doesn't make sense logically, right? You will then gravitate towards the things that are easeful because they are proving to you that you are desirable, just like you believe, And I know it sounds like it's easier said than done, of course. And it doesn't seem realistic when you're hearing it, from someone on a podcast, or if you have a hard time with your self-worth. But I promise you, over time and with practice, it does make more and more sense. Just from the outside right now, if you're not in that headspace, it doesn't seem practical. It doesn't seem real, but it does happen over time. And I'm someone who I would consider maybe sometimes a skeptic about these things, or I was before when I was younger and, didn't really understand all the, the self-development work. And before I started therapy, I was a skeptic about things that that had to do with you changing your perception about yourself and then people and this and that around you, like changing. I didn't really get it. The more you practice it, the more you implement it and you show evidence to yourself that it happens, you start to believe it more and more, right? So you have to kind of start before you believe it. I can attest that it is something that does work. It'll work differently for everybody, and it might not work for everybody because everyone's different, but I am an example that it does work. So don't be disheartened or discouraged if you feel like it doesn't make sense to you right now. Just start working on your internal self first, right? Journal, take yourself out to places that you just genuinely enjoy if you can, being mindful of your budget or whatever. You don't have to spend money to do this. Like, just take yourself on a little walk if you can. Something that makes you feel good, that makes you feel pleasure in whatever way that means for you, because that in itself shows you that you are desirable, that you are wanted by you at the very least, right? And if you want you, then the other things that you want become like you, if that makes sense. So they are on your level. So it feels like you don't have to struggle as much to get those things, or at least like you don't gravitate towards things that create a huge struggle, that are misaligned with you because you don't see yourself like that anymore. So of course it takes time, it takes practice, but I hope this gave you a different perspective if you struggle with a struggle mentality. If you feel like you always have to be struggling or it has to be difficult for you to get what you want, look at that a little bit deeper. Look at the relationship with yourself, journal about it. If you want to talk to me one-to-one, I have calls that you can book. We can discuss this in more detail. But yeah, like really explore that relationship with yourself and try to understand where that comes from. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope, again, this was informative. I hope it gave you a different perspective. Like I said, if you want to work one-to-one with me, you can book a call. I have a Substack where I write about these topics. You can follow me on social media if you want to. And I would really appreciate it if you left a rating and review for this podcast. Other than that, I'll be back again soon with another episode.